I was not just a paranormal investigator, I was a hunter, a seeker of things that should not be seen, a collector of whispers from the void. For years, I prowled through the veil separating the living from the damned, and I reveled in it. While others on my team sought only answers, I sought dominion over the darkness. It was a power struggle, and I refused to be a victim. Many times, I had fought off attacks from the unseen, creatures that slithered through dimensions, desperate to latch onto flesh, to claim me as their vessel. They tried to invade my mind, my soul, to break me from within. But they underestimated me. I had seen things that would shatter the sanity of most. I had heard voices that dripped with malice and hunger, calling to me from shadows where light dared not tread. And yet, I remained unbroken, unfazed, a sentinel standing against the tide of horror. One of my team members, a reckless fool named Jessica, had a habit of taking artifacts from places that should have been left undisturbed. Cursed objects, relics steeped in the suffering of the past, she collected them like trophies, littering her home with them. I had warned her that these things did not belong to her, that they carried stains of something far worse than history. But she never listened. Perhaps she wanted to prove herself immune to their influence. Or perhaps she was simply too arrogant to fear what she should have. Jessica's life was a whirlwind of chaos. She thrived in the storm, always at the center of drama, feeding off the turmoil as if it gave her purpose. But then, the disturbances in her home escalated. She was no longer just a collector of haunted artifacts, she had become their prisoner. Shadows moved where they should not, whispers crawled through the walls, objects shifted without reason. Something in her home had woken up. Something that had finally decided it had played along for long enough. She begged our team leader to investigate, to bring our equipment and uncover what lurked in the darkness she had cultivated. We agreed, though I knew better. This was not an investigation. This was a reckoning. The night of the investigation, we gathered at headquarters to load our gear. The team was chatty, filling the air with nervous jokes, as if laughter could shield them from what awaited. I was chosen as one of the drivers, with 3 team members in my car. An ice chest filled with sodas and food sat in the back seat, a pathetic attempt at normalcy in the face of the unknown. The drive took 40 minutes, cutting through roads swallowed by darkness. As we neared Jessica's home, a heaviness settled over me, pressing against my skin like a warning. Something was watching. Upon arrival, we conducted a walkthrough of the house, gathering information and planning our camera placements. Some team members set up a base under the carport, arranging monitors and cables, oblivious to the silent hostility seeping from the walls. Jessica led us through her home, her voice trembling despite her efforts to appear composed. Then, we entered the living room. That was when I saw them. Dolls. Dozens of them, displayed in glass cases like an army waiting for orders. Their glassy eyes seemed to follow us, their frozen smiles taunting. Some were old, their faces cracked with age, while others looked almost new, as if their former owners had abandoned them only yesterday. I had seen cursed objects before, but this was something else entirely. A museum of the damned. One doll stood out among the rest. It was smaller than the others, its porcelain skin flawless, its eyes painted with eerie precision. It wore a red dress with a white pinafore and a matching red bonnet. Its face was serene, almost lifelike. My gaze lingered on it for a moment too long. Then, it moved. A tiny, deliberate motion, a hand reaching toward me. It was slight, almost imperceptible, but I knew what I had seen. And I was not the only one. That doll just moved. The whisper came from beside me, sharp with disbelief. One of my team members had seen it too. A rational person might have doubted their own eyes, might have convinced themselves it was a trick of the light, a misfiring neuron in the brain. But I knew better. This was no illusion. It was a warning. A challenge. For the first time in years, I felt something I had not felt since my first encounter with the unknown, an instinctive, primal urge to run. It coiled in my gut like a living thing, screaming at me to leave, to flee before it was too late. But I did not run. Fear was a luxury I had abandoned long ago. If something in that house wanted a battle, then so be it. I was ready. The air in the living room thickened, pressing against my chest like unseen hands, squeezing, testing. The doll, now still once more, sat in its case, an innocent lie of porcelain and fabric. I took a slow, measured breath, pushing aside the tension curling in my gut. Jessica laughed nervously, brushing off the moment as a trick of the light. But I could see the unease in her eyes, the flicker of doubt in her forced smile. The others hesitated, shifting awkwardly, waiting for someone to break the silence. "We set up in here first," I said, my voice firm. I wanted cameras on that doll, every angle covered. If it moved again, we would see it. The team got to work. EMF detectors hummed, thermal cameras were positioned, and audio recorders were placed strategically throughout the room. I busied myself with the equipment, but my mind stayed fixed on the doll. The feeling of being watched, of being weighed and measured by something unseen, never faded. We moved to other rooms, setting up more equipment, but the energy in the house clung to me like cobwebs. Whispers skittered just beyond the reach of hearing, fleeting shadows danced at the edges of my vision. It wasn't paranoia. It was presence. Hours passed, and the house grew colder. The usual technical malfunctions began, batteries draining impossibly fast, interference with the monitors, unexplainable static over the audio feeds. But these were expected. Normal, in our line of work. Then, the screaming started. It was faint at first, distant, as if coming from another floor. A high, keening wail, warping into a chorus of agonized voices, twisting together into a discordant symphony of suffering. The team froze. Eyes wide, breaths shallow, we turned toward the source of the sound. The doll. Every piece of equipment in the living room spiked, EMF detectors blaring, temperature readings plummeting. The monitors flickered, and for a split second, the feed from the living room camera distorted, showing static, then darkness, then a face. Hollow eyes. A mouth twisted in silent rage. And then nothing. Jessica bolted, cursing under her breath, knocking over a stack of papers as she ran from the room. A few others hesitated before following her. But I stayed. "Show yourself," I said, my voice calm, almost inviting. Silence. Then, a slow, deliberate knock on the glass case. 3 sharp raps, measured, calculated. I turned back to the doll. It had moved. This time, there was no denying it. Its porcelain fingers were now splayed against the inside of the glass, pressed so hard they seemed almost lifelike. The painted mouth had twisted, ever so slightly, into something that could have been a smile. I grinned back. "Is that all you've got?" The room held its breath, the air so thick with tension it felt like wading through water. The knock on the glass reverberated through my bones, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I stepped closer. The team had scattered, their courage dissolving into the darkness, but I relished this moment. The unknown had reached out, and I was ready to reach back. My fingers hovered over the glass case, mere inches from the doll's outstretched porcelain hands. The energy between us crackled, electric and malevolent. The static on the monitors returned, shifting in a frenzied pattern. A voice, deep and guttural, crawled through the audio feed. "Let me out." A chill slithered down my spine, but I refused to step back. I had heard voices before, whispers from beyond, desperate and deceiving. But this one was different. It wasn't pleading. It was demanding. The temperature in the room dropped further, my breath now visible in the dim glow of the equipment. A pressure built in my skull, a pounding that matched the rhythm of the 3 knocks. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but instincts were for the weak. I was stronger than fear. I placed my hand flat against the glass. The second I did, everything erupted at once. The case trembled violently, rattling with an unearthly force. The lights flickered, and a deep vibration spread through the walls. The doll's head snapped sideways in a jerky, unnatural movement, its painted eyes now locked onto mine with an intensity that sent a ripple of excitement through me. A scream, louder than before, ripped through the house, shaking the very foundation. From the doorway, Jessica whimpered, pressing herself against the wall as if she could melt into it. The others had returned, their faces pale with horror, but I barely registered them. My focus was entirely on the entity before me. "You think you frighten me?" I murmured, a smirk curling at my lips. "I've seen worse." The case suddenly exploded, shards of glass flying in every direction. A force slammed into me, cold and violent, knocking me off my feet. I landed hard, my vision spinning, but I laughed. The house had finally shown its teeth. And I was ready to bite back. The impact rattled through my bones, but I didn't hesitate. I pushed myself to my feet, ignoring the sting of glass embedded in my palms. The entity had come to play, and I had every intention of showing it exactly who I was. The room pulsed with energy, thick and suffocating. The doll lay in shattered pieces at my feet, yet its presence remained. No, it had not been the doll at all, it was something far worse, something ancient and angry, something that had been waiting. Jessica and the others stood frozen, their faces pale with terror. The static on the monitors gave way to deep, guttural laughter, inhuman and mocking. The house itself seemed to breathe, the walls groaning, the floorboards creaking under invisible weight. "You want it out?" I taunted, my voice dripping with defiance. "Then show yourself." A gust of air swept through the room, carrying with it a foul, rotting stench. The shadows stretched, twisting unnaturally, and then it appeared. A hulking shape, blacker than the void, towering over me with eyes like smoldering embers. Its form was ever-shifting, tendrils of darkness writhing as if hungry for something, no, someone. Me. The others ran, their panicked footsteps echoing down the hall. But I held my ground. Fear was a weakness, a luxury I had long since abandoned. I could feel it testing me, pushing against the edges of my mind, searching for cracks to slip through. I grinned. "You should have stayed hidden." It lunged. A force like a hurricane slammed into me, lifting me off my feet and throwing me against the far wall. Pain burst through my ribs, but I laughed, low, dark, and filled with something close to exhilaration. This was the battle I had been waiting for. I forced my way back to my feet, pressing a hand against the cold floor for balance. The entity loomed closer, a whispering cacophony of voices rising in its wake. It thought it could break me. I whispered the incantations I had committed to memory, words older than time itself. The air shimmered, crackling with unseen power. The entity recoiled, its form twisting violently. It screeched, a sound that sent fractures through the very fabric of reality. And then, as suddenly as it had come, it was gone. The house fell silent. The air lightened. The temperature rose. Jessica peeked back through the doorway, her face streaked with tears. Is it over?" I dusted myself off, my smile lingering. For now. We packed up quickly, the team eager to escape the place. But I knew the truth. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. And that thought? It thrilled me.